Hey, Low Code Approach listeners, this is Wendy Haddad. Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to let you know that we are starting to plan for the next season, and we want to make sure we hear from you on what is most important and relevant in terms of the topics that we'll be choosing. So if you could open a web browser and pop over to aka.ms/low code topic request, that's aka.ms/low code topic request, all one word. Fill out that brief survey on what topics and what subjects, what guests you might want to hear from. And who knows, maybe it'll make it into the next season of the podcast. Thanks so much and happy listening.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I am Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, just one of three hosts, which means I'm joined by...
I'm Wendy Haddad. I'm a Senior Cloud Solution Architect, a delivery lead here at Microsoft, and a former Microsoft customer, and I am joined by...
Super excited to be here, Ken Aguillard, and I won't get into my origin story today. However, part of it is on with the podcast. Today with us is Julie Strauss. Julie, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So Julie is VP of Project Sophia. And I think that leads us to our first question. At a high level, before we dig in, what is Project Sophia? I know it was announced at Ignite in 2023, but just what is that?
Project Sophia is a business research canvas. It really represents new immersive experiences that we think of as the next generation AI-first business applications from Microsoft. It's an infinite canvas that allows any business leader to walk up, ask any question. We help you identify the data to be used to answer that question. We correlate insights and represents the findings, really allowing you to create journeys around specific business questions. So the short answer is it's a business research canvas designed from AI first principles.
Hey, Julie, so I want to dig in there a little bit. You said AI first a couple of times. What does that actually mean? And what is different about a platform that wasn't necessarily AI first, but AI is, or artificial intelligence is added in later versus something that's designed from the ground up for artificial intelligence use?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And we like to use terms like that in Microsoft too. So it's good to clarify kind of what we mean by it. When we say AI first, it means that every experience, every interaction has been designed leveraging the full power of generative AI. That doesn't necessarily mean a lot either if you're a customer, but it just means we have no restrictions in terms of how we design the experiences that we are enabling through AI. Many experiences today for AI is kind of a sidecar where we help you do your existing task more efficiently, right? So very often it's a chat experience. With Sophia, we don't actually have an existing application. So we had the opportunity ground up to think, what could a business application look like if we think AI first? A practical example, if you have a business application today and you want to show a chart, the developer or the PM decides it's going to be a bar chart or a bubble chart. What is this going to be? With Sophia, we generate the UI and make the decision for what kind of chart on the fly based on the data we are returning. Because how much information you have access to differentiates whether you want to actually show a bubble chart or a bar chart, etc. So that's really what we mean, the power of generating the UI and information on the fly, which just gives us an incredible amount of freedom. I think it might mean more to Microsoft in how we develop than necessarily for customers. But customers will benefit from this because we will take everything we learn as well and help infuse that into products across Microsoft. So it's a lot of learning and giving back and helping all other products to have the same benefits over time.
So many questions.
Here we go.
I didn't expect anything less, Ken.
So Julie, great explanation, but I'm curious, how extensible is the platform? And what I mean by that is, from the architecture standpoint, how does it know? How does it access the data? Like a business researcher is usually someone within the organization that I have to go talk to Sean Wendy, I have to go maybe talk to all these different folks and do my research. How does Sophia interconnect all those things to provide that information?
It is a very good question, Ken. Whenever we think about co-pilots, we think about these digital assistants. We all get a digital assistant with a co-pilot. When we designed Sophia, the thinking is really, and that's what we've built, is we are giving you kind of an army of digital assistants, hitting exactly on what you're saying. So one digital assistant is the data analyst. If you have a business question today, you might already have a dashboard and you can go and answer it. There are many questions we don't have a ready-to-go dashboard. What do? If you have a bigger team and you might have your own set of analysts, you go and ask, help me find the answer to this question. That data analyst go and find the right data source. They create the reports or the dashboard or visualizations. They share the learnings. You go back and forth on that. Is that what you want to see? Do you want to tweak? And you kind of come up with the visualization for that, and then you go present your findings. One of the digital assistants you get with Sophia is the skills of that data analyst to identify the data, do visualizations, come up with insights. But if that was Sophia, we are kind of a BI tool. So that digital assistant is only one piece of it. The real value or the kind of intelligence in Sophia is around all the subject matter experts around business domains. So the knowledge about business processes within sales, service, HR, that are the other digital assistants that collaborate. So not only do we help you find the question, but we give you the context of these colleagues, as you said, that live in other domains that help put the answers together. So that's really the business domain expertise that is infused into Sophia. So what would normally take a lot of people to collaborate across departments, the goal is really you can initiate that journey as a single person because you get those subject matter experts as part of the application. Now, we are on a very early stage in that journey, right? So right now we are focused on sales and service. We are starting to allow you to ask questions across these domains, but in the fullness of time, the goal is you can walk up to Sophia, ask a question, and we help you corral that business expertise across departments.
Okay, so I have a hobby, Julie. I like prompting Copilot. It's kind of a weird side thing that I do, and prompt engineering and figuring out, okay, how do I get more and more out of this tool? But I realize that some of the best ways to get more specific results or better results mean longer and longer prompts and more complex. And you treat it like an intern and you provide step-by-step instructions. So when you say you just walk up and ask the question, how much prompt engineering is really required here versus just as a leader just delegating, go figure this out? Is Sophia able to actually do as my personal assistant or my team assistant?
Yes, we are actually the one doing the prompt engineering. And because it is a business application, we know a lot of context that you don't have to build. So when you walk up to ChatGPT, like any chat experience, you have to give it a lot of context to give a precise answer back. Because we are a business application, our prompt engineering is really built around the knowledges of business processes and where you are in the organization. That takes that work away from you. So you can ask a simple question. No, let's say you even select inside the application, I'm in a sales domain. We can give you much more value back, much more precise answers. And if you ask a question that's so broad we can't answer, we will give you an answer back, but we will also say, look, we don't really have enough. Can you help me answer this? So the whole idea is we create a dialogue. That's what we call the AI cursor, which is once you created a blueprint, a visualization, and you ask a question, we trigger that AI cursor to ask you more questions. So it becomes a dialogue. That's really the role of that digital assistant.
It sounds like, much like BTS, you're creating an army of help, if you will, for the business. Question here along the lines of Wendy's prompts. You mentioned about the dynamic UI that's being built. So let's say I don't like this particular chart that it generates. Can I do something like what Wendy said and use prompts to say, oh, I want it to be displayed this way?
Absolutely. So today, let's say you get a bar chart and you want a bundle chart or you want different data. that's really where the AI cursor come in. And the AI cursor is really what super contextual chat experience, where you can click on a chart. You could just say, show me a bubble chart instead, and have the size of the bubble be this. And we generate that. So you can really fine tune what you're looking at that way. Or you can say for the whole blueprint or wherever you are in your canvas, you can ask more and more questions. And you can constantly decide, do you want to update what you're already looking at? Or do you want to generate a new piece of UI? That's really how we think of it as a journey, because when you're analyzing your business, one question always triggers the next, right? It is supposed to generate curiosity for where to dig deeper. And so instead of having one long prompt, you have questions and you just engage with the canvas and you create kind of new insights from that.
Thank you, Julie. So we've done a good job of talking about what is Project Sophia. I think one topic I want to hit on is what were the use cases or potential use cases that kind of spawned Project Sophia? And, as it's been out and announced since Ignite, without naming the customer, do you have any success stories or customer use cases that you may be able to talk about with us?
Yeah, I think when we set out big and bold, and we said Sophia will be for any business user. In theory, it is, because anybody can walk up and ask a question. We really see gravity amongst business leaders and managers, because that fills a space where there really is no application today. One example, you can go up and analyze sales, right? You can walk up, analyze your sales data. You can walk up and analyze your supply chain data. What is really hard is a combination of the two, to say, how do I optimize my sales 10% by optimizing supply chain? There are not a lot of organizations asking that question today, because, gosh, where do I even start to analyze that? Because that is different people, right? So we see a lot of, that's why it gravitates toward managers versus individual sellers, who has much more value in using Sales Copilot, for example. It is also around the use case around managing a team. How do I optimize what sellers are focusing on with sales? So we see a lot in sales, but that's also what we are pushing a lot. That's where we have invested a lot, but also around resource utilization. Let's say you do project management, or you are a project organization. How do you make sure the right resources are assigned and allocated to the right project? So that's where we see a lot of gravity today, sales and service, kind of at a managing a team and organization perspective. Have in mind, we only support local files today, Excel and PDF. We have Dataverse and Salesforce in private preview. We see some of those private preview customers where I can't really share. We see a much more broadening of the use cases, because you now have much more flexibility to kind of the data you can use as input for the scenarios.
So, Julie, I want to take us toward the technology. We've talked a lot about use case and idea of AI, but we have kind of a mixture of the business, but also IT that listens to this podcast. Can you talk to me about positioning? Is Sophia part of the Power Platform? Is it using tools like Power BI? Is it something different? Assessments still apply to Sophia, or am I looking at this as a completely separate product?
It's still very early for us so it is a standalone service today, but it is designed to be complementary to all other copilots, right? So let's say, but it is not part of the Power Platform. Power Platform, you have makers and users. Sophia is a full-blown SaaS experience, meaning you actually walk up to the website and start asking questions. So you don't have to configure anything to get started. You really just start engaging. And when I say it's complementary, it is because it's augmenting those experiences. So if you have a Copilot for sales, for example, all your sellers are engaging in optimizing their day-to-day conversations. Sophia really sits on top of that, helping kind of the managers manage teams, etc. So right now we see use in combination with most of the other business applications.
So in the same path as Wendy, getting ultra technical in questions, why Project Sophia? Why that name?
Sophia means intelligence. And when we started out, we just knew we would be a research canvas, right? So, and we would be based on obviously using large language models, but so much of the intelligence is also what Sophia brings to the table. So it is our own AI engine built around business processes, business process knowledge, business domains. So that's really how we came up with the name.
I love it. Thank you.
Julie.
Ken.
Here we go.
Oh, no.
He's been chomping at the bit waiting for this moment.
We have to ask the question, as the platform progresses and we start growing and more data sources start coming in, how are we thinking about governing and securing the platform in terms of making sure we're using AI responsible within there? Sounds like Sophia is a wonderful, wonderful tool, but you and I know that governance and security is an enablement factor for many organizations. How are we thinking about that?
Yes, as a huge advocate, having been living through the era of enabling governance and security for the Power Platform, that is definitely something that is top of mind for us. That is also, frankly, deliberately why right now we do not even allow sharing. So today, every tenant have their own store, right? In Sophia, each user have their own store. So when Wendy go and create a workspace, you actually can't share it with anyone right now. It is in complete isolation. You cannot accidentally overshare anything. Once we open up and we don't allow you access to data sources you don't already have access to either, right? Which is very, very important for tools like Sophia. Because as you say, the talk track and what we have built has an immense power. The minute we open up for sharing and collaboration and co-authoring, governance is going to be absolute number one priority. No, like really security and governance out of the gate. We haven't enabled that yet, so we haven't invested deeply there yet, but it will absolutely be a core priority once we do.
So much like the name of the project, you are using your wisdom to hold it back, if you will, yes, before we expand much broader.
And it is deliberate. Like every customer asks for sharing, and we are deliberately right now saying no, because it will be a lot of investments we will have to put into governing that. So yes, we all learn from our experience.
And that could be its own episode, I think. Actually, on the line of thought with governance, as I'm on the front lines in the AI space, I get a lot of questions about hallucinations. Yeah. So what are we doing to minimize hallucinations? And also, if so much is being automated, how do we still be the driver's seat and be able to check AI's work and trust the output that we're receiving?
And Wendy, maybe for those who are not intimately familiar with it, can you explain to our audience what is the hallucination or what is a perceived hallucination?
Yeah, so in terms of artificial intelligence, there's different ways that AI works, and I'm not an AI specialist, but I tell my students very fancy text prediction. And so it's literally generating the next word, and sometimes that can be, it can pull something from another data source or misunderstand or make something up that's not really what you're looking for. It doesn't really exist in the data set, because there is that mode of predicting text unless you're able to confine it to only look at that data source. And sometimes in our prompting, right, we have to say, don't pretend to solve the answer. I want to solve it. You give me recommendations instead, or those kinds of things. But if Sophia's automating so much of that process, can I still do that? Can I still check its work, or do I need to do something different with the prompting?
You almost stole my thunder, actually, Wendy. I think I need to answer this in 3. As a user, you can always check the work. We have what we call show work, where on the backside of a visualization or an answer, we kind of do a 180 and you can actually see how we arrived at the answer. So that's one. That's how you as a user can check it. However, before we even get there, the core of hallucination is when a system make up data or answers that's not even to find in the data. That is such a core part of what Sophia is. And I'm not going to give away all our secrets, but I will say 2 things. Our prompt engineering is designed around super clear instructions. That's what you were saying. How can I control how we are asking the question and what's coming back? In Sophia, so much of our intelligence is around that. And how we can do that is actually because we are a business application, because we know the domain and the context, our prompt engineering that we do behind the scenes, we can make that super clear. Another part of that is After we generate the prompt, we also have an evaluation framework afterwards where we double check the answer that came back. So that what that really means is, let's say you go and ask ChatGPT, you are a seller, you're a manager for sellers, and you're thinking about your sellers and you say, how can they become better hunters? You will get answers around wildlife and like hunting, right? You don't have the context. In Sophia, we have your business context. So asking the same question, we will give you recipes for how you optimize your sellers to go hunt for leads. That's not really hallucination, but it is preciseness and it is the context. But let's say you ask Sophia, you're analyzing your sellers and you ask, how is Ken doing? And we will say how Ken is doing. He's an amazing seller. So we'll get an answer back. We have him in the data set. Let's say you ask, how is Angelina Jolie doing, right? That's where you will see a hallucination. I don't find it, I make stuff up. We will actually say, I am sorry, I don't have data about Angelina Jolie in your data set. So we will say, do you want me to go to a public data source and get back whatever news about Angelina Jolie?
So it's asking you before it goes to the public.
You. And I will not claim we cannot do hallucination. That would be stupid of me to do in public, but we are actually not seeing them. And we've designed the product to be very conservative, and we throw out our hands way more often than we would like to. We even do that sometimes when we have the answer, but we are not sure. We'll be better at that over time as well. But if you are asking for something we don't have, our evaluation framework will actually stop us from giving you anything. So that has a side consequence. Sometimes customers saying, you throw up your arms a little too often. I would much rather do that than create answers that are not there. That goes back to the beginning of the conversation. You can go back and look. Even if you are in doubt, you can go and see, like, where did this really come from? So we put a lot of emphasis in, again, because it is a business application. It's not a generic kind of chat experience. But we do pull in public data. So we can do that. But we are very clear when it is public data and when it is in your own data set. So that prompt engineering, you feel you must do yourself, we are doing. We know your context.
I'm peeling back the layers of the onions for a moment because you mentioned two things that I want to clarify. Well, one thing, and then I want to add a follow-up. You said our prompt engineering. So we're manipulating the prompt. My prompt is not going straight to the LLM. So can you clarify that? And the second thing, can you clarify is if, let's say, Ken puts the same prompt in and I put the same prompt in and Sean puts the same prompt in, will we all get the same results back?
That depends on which data sources you are asking for over, right? So which context are you in? And that's in a business as well. Like you can ask the same question whether you're in sales or service or something else, and the answer may not be the same. We use the same accuracy. We use the same way of answering it, but your context is important for the question you are asking. And here's where you will see changes. You can go, this is AI, which frankly freaked us out in the beginning. And I think we'll look back years from now and think, oh, you remember when we thought that was weird? What will happen is you can ask a question today on one data set, show me top sellers. We will always show you top sellers based on the data. But today we might show you a line chart. Tomorrow it might come back as a bar chart. To the day after it might be a pie chart. Because AI, we are generating that UX on the fly. So even over the same data set, your journey might not look the same, but the answers do not change, but the visualization may change. That was very frustrating when we started with Sophia because it felt unpredictable. But it's not the data that is changing or the answers, but it is the representation of it. And to answer your first question, your prompt is still your prompt, but we provide more context to it. And we also do behind the scenes, like we go back and have a conversation behind the scenes, like what we are getting back. And that's how we decide whether we throw you another question or we fetch your data. But I also think of Sophia, it's not infinite answers. Let's say you ask, how are my sales doing? That's a super broad question, right? We might choose to give you sales according to pipeline or actual sales or the forecast. We might give you top sellers. We might give you based on revenue. We might give you based on you if you're not precise. That triggers your next question for, oh, I didn't mean for usage. I meant for revenue. So we indirectly, Sophia is helping you through your prompt engineering. Instead of you writing half-page detailed prompt up front, we take you through that until you get kind of to the meat of what you're looking for. That's really also why we see a lot of gravity around business leaders. Like, you're not sitting half an hour designing your prompt, right? You're having a conversation with the data and you get new ideas and you go and explore. So we're not changing your prompt for you, but we are kind of taking you through the flow of getting you to the preciseness you really want through that journey.
So, Julie, I know people can go and try Project Sophia by going to aka.ms/Project Sophia, try it, all one word. If, you know, what we're talking about is getting everybody excited, go check it out, get your hands on there. So I went to adoption.microsoft.com/Project Sophia, and there's a really good video on there, like a demo video, and the voiceover is fantastic. And so on there, it kind of shows the walkthrough of Project Sophia and a use case. I noticed in there, it's very vertical in presentation as you're going and breaking down from block to block to block in the presentation. And this might be a roadmap question, or just didn't dig into it in the demo, but when I'm going in through data, is there a possibility of pivoting without losing my work and asking about a specific bit of data or graph, like I want to dig deeper in there, that might open up a horizontal presentation because it's a large canvas that we're working on? Is that part of it, and that wasn't shown in the demo, or is that coming up in the future?
Some of it is already there, more is coming. So it was very vertical. Again, it was very early. We got a very short amount of time to get our preview out. And that was really the goal, to keep it super narrow, but to allow us to get feedback. So any one of you using it, please use the feedback mechanism. Anything you have to say, we want to hear, because this is really pushing the boundaries in a lot of ways. Originally, when we released, if you ask the question, it would be linear. Where it is right now, actually, we released that 2 weeks after we launched. If you go back to an earlier blueprint and ask another question, we fork your branch, because we want the journeys to represent your thought process. Before, we would just pop it in the end and you kind of lost track of where you were at. So already, like weeks, a month within we released, we support multi-branch. Going back and we will branch. That is what we have already done. A lot of other changes is, as you see in the UI, in that video, all of kind of the AI cursing, we had suggested next actions on the side. We're actually taking that entire panel away and embedding that in context of each visualization, so it becomes much more contextual. Now, if you ask a question for a specific area within a blueprint, we will also trigger a new branch for that. So you can decide, do I just want to dig into this one, or is it the full picture? And what we will do moving forward is we will actually create horizontal journeys from that as well. So you can imagine you go down in depth, and you go to the side to dive into a specific topic. So you can imagine this whole web of like really using that canvas to its full potential, which we did not do on day one. So a lot of investments going into benefiting from the full canvas and allowing the AI cursor to be even more contextual.
Julie, I'm a little curious. The way you described it there, like, it makes me ask, what's next inside of the platform for Project Sophia? And specifically, I think I just had this wild, crazy idea, like, oh, it would be great if I could take all of this data and then instantly create a PowerPoint based off of that. And then from that, had that be interactive. And now I can query inside of that dynamically. If someone asks me a question while I'm presenting, I can just go into Sophia and maybe go vertical, go horizontal, and so on. So are we thinking along those lines of other integrations with our ecosystem?
Oh, Ken, we have so many ideas, so little time. Yes, we would love to do that. What you suggest is actually, that was in the original framing doc, but again, as a deep advocate of governance, that also freaks me out. Because once you take this out in a PowerPoint, it's much easier to float around. So
Yes.
we will get there eventually. But again, I've learned my lesson. So we will not put anything that can accidentally overshare. But what I do envision will happen is, imagine you have a business review. We all prep. How much time do we spend prepping for business reviews? Then you have the data and somebody asks a question we can't answer. We say, we'll come back tomorrow, or we'll go look at that. The idea, we actually have organizations who use Sophia as a business review. They sit in a team meeting, they have the data, they have a blueprint, they ask questions. Because you can go and ask on the fly. That's what we envision will happen. But again, we need the governance in place and all of that. Right now, they just share in team and they know they're in a room where they are supposed to be able to see the data. So there's a lot of energy. Like, there's so much excitement. There's so many ways we could go where we will invest for sure. And we are already support from our data sources. Like, we just did Excel and local file to get started and get feedback. We will invest in adding support for more data sources for a long, long time. And the goal is to support all the data sources we support with the Power Platform. That will really open up a lot of use cases. Also, the depth of the intelligence within the domains. Think about all the business process expertise we have in the company that we are going to infuse into Sophia. That's another huge investment area. As well as just keep focusing on making the UI more intuitive, etc. So that's really where the core investments will be.
I have so many questions and so little time right now. I'm trying to be really selective here with my question. I guess you mentioned it as a business review tool and that some customers are using it in that way. But you also said that we're not openly allowing sharing right now. Maybe this is a roadmap question or so however you choose to answer it. Are we thinking about things like co-authoring or working together to actually, build out the business process review before it's used as the presentation layer?
Yes. Co-authoring is going to be a key part. We always say with Sophia, we give you the digital assistance representing each domain, but the goal will be you have co-authoring. You invite peers in to collaborate on your journey. But again, we will not open up for that until we are ready to do the deep investments in governance behind that as well. And we all know that's a lot of thoughtfulness that needs to go into that. We will have co-authoring, we will have sharing, we will have export. It's just a matter of time.
I thank you for triggering me so many times by saying governance today.
I know, Ken, that's why I'm here.
I'm sure there's so many backstories there. Let's get away from governance, otherwise we're never going to get Ken to recover. And let's talk really quickly about the ROI of what we're accomplishing here, Julie. I'd like to understand the value that we're providing, both obviously in finding this information, but talk to me about some of the time saved and some of the value that we're seeing other companies as they're trying this get maybe that they wouldn't have gotten before with Project Sophia.
Yeah, we see, I would say that tactical and strategic use cases. The tactical use cases, like imagine like in the demo, Sean, like the ability to use AI to generate an account plan. If you're talking to sellers and how much time they spent prepping for sales review about their pipeline, it's a lot of time. With Sophia, being able to enter that data we generated for you, it is hours. It is so many hours for every single seller and every single month. That is just taking a task you have to do today that is highly manual, time consuming, but has a super high return on investment because you need to know where you're focusing. So that's it's a tactical application of Sophia that just saves hours. Then we have the strategic opportunity and return on investment, which is going and answering questions you wouldn't even do because you just can't do it without AI. Some of those use cases around, let's say, detecting variances in your period close, right? Today, you go in, many companies run on Excel, right? You go into Excel, you look at a slice, you find your variances, you go to it, you take notes for what happened, you go to another slice and do it again. With Sophia, you have the opportunity to look at all your levels of data, 5 Excel spreadsheets at the same time, find the variances and we can annotate it. Like, so thinking about those use cases where, gosh, I wouldn't even approach the business problem like that without the power of AI. Like, we are not even started to count. We see companies projecting thousands of hours saved, right, across employees. But that is by reimagining how the business processes are done. And there's work to do both on our side, but also on customer side to really rethink how we approach some of these business processes.
Well, and I know if I can suggest that it's not just about hours saved, but it's also about what you do with those hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll refer our listeners to an episode we had with Juliet Helms, who's been a guest on the podcast, talking about the value of your investment with Microsoft Technologies and some of the value and how to calculate that value, but also the value in where you invest that time and those resources elsewhere. So just thinking about that as you're considering investing in Project Sophia.
It also sounds like the tool is a great way for individuals to scale themselves as well, right? It's something that we hear very, very common is there's only 24 hours in the day or whatever colloquialism you want to use. Like, I don't have time to do this. There's too many things. The whole thing about doing more with less or whatever that may be. And it sounds like the tool, Sophia, is enabling folks finally to have that capability to do something about that.
Well, scaling their thinking, scaling their outputs, and leveling up in a strategy sense what they're able to accomplish that they may not have even gathered those insights, like you said, to your point, Julie, because they never were able to look at the data in that way before. So it's an interesting leveling up for all of us.
Well said.
Yeah, I absolutely love that users get to reimagine, how they accomplish this task, and Project Sophia is there to help them bring that to a reality. So we mentioned a couple links before, the aka.ms/Project Sophia. Try it. And additionally, go to adoption.microsoft.com/Project Sophia. Are there any other links, suggestions that you'd like to provide users for getting started with Project Sophia as we wrap up this episode?
I would say use the site that you reference, give us feedback, try out Sophia, even inside the product. Like, let us know where we are doing well. If you want to engage with us and tell us about your use case, we learn all the time. Like, when customers engage, customers even come up with, oh my gosh, I'd never thought about this. This is how I am using it. It's super inspirational, and it is so early that there are so many ways we can go with the product. And the more feedback we get from customers on how they use it, where they want to use it, where we fall short. Again, it's very early for a brand new product, and really tuning in to understanding where customers see value when they start using it is super important to us. And there's so much we can do, and we want to be really selective in what is important. For example, sharing, we get the feedback all the time. Can we enable sharing? We say no, but it's like they understand why and actually appreciate why not yet. And instead go deeper in domain intelligence, whatever. And that's going to be kind of the painful decisions I have to make all the time and get that feedback and not do it. But it's just super important we get to the meat of the return on the investment before we broaden that up. So, but that's feedback we want to hear, like that at some point that's going to pivot and no longer be the right choice. So hearing how you want to use it, how you use it, where you see value, where we fall short, that's my big ask for everyone listening in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. And we actually look forward to following up with you a little bit later on in Project Sophia's release to follow up about what's going on, where we're standing, and what we can look for on the horizon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.